Savannah thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd take her hush money, smile for the cameras, and vanish while her $61 million charity scam thrived. She thought $15,000 could buy my silence, my dignity, my compliance. But Savannah forgot one crucial thing: I built the system that hides her secrets. Every transaction, every offshore account, every falsified report flows through the architecture I designed. And tonight, while she stands in her white gown accepting applause from 300 donors, I just made sure the right people saw everything. The SEC, the board, the press, they're all watching now. Savannah wanted me gone. Instead, I'm about to become her worst nightmare. My name is Madison Hale, and until 3 weeks ago, I was the senior financial analyst who kept Ridgewell Systems' cash flow running like clockwork. 34 years old, MIT graduate, the one they called when nine-figure deals needed restructuring or when offshore acquisitions got messy. I wasn't just good at my job, I was the architect behind every major financial optimization this company had seen in the past 5 years. The morning everything changed started like any other. I was reviewing quarterly projections when I noticed a pattern in the Whitmore Hope Foundation transactions that made my stomach turn. Small inconsistencies at first, the kind most auditors would miss, but I'd built these systems. I knew their rhythms like my own heartbeat. Whitmore Hope Foundation, Savannah's pride and joy. The CEO's wife had turned it into her personal empire, a $61 million monument to her supposed philanthropy. Every gala, every press release, every tearful speech about helping underprivileged children, all of it orchestrated by Savannah Whitmore, the untouchable queen of Silverford's charity circuit. But the numbers told a different story. Purchase orders inflated by 300%. Vendor payments to companies that existed only on paper. Wire transfers that bounced through 4 different accounts before disappearing into offshore havens. This wasn't mismanagement. This was systematic fraud. I spent 72 hours documenting everything, cross-referencing every transaction, building an airtight case. When I walked into that boardroom at 9:30 on a Tuesday morning, I had 43 pages of evidence that should have ended Savannah's charade instantly. The board members shifted uncomfortably as I presented. James Whitmore, our CEO, kept his face neutral, but I saw his jaw tighten when I showed the Brighton Consulting invoices, $8.7 million paid to a company registered to Savannah's cousin. These are serious allegations. Madison, James said, his voice carrying that practiced calm that made him so effective in hostile takeovers. We'll need to review. The door opened. Savannah walked in wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no, never been questioned, never been caught. I heard we were discussing my foundation, she said, settling into the chair beside her husband. Her smile was arctic. How thoughtful of you, Madison, to take such interest in our charitable work. She reached into her purse Hermes, naturally, and pulled out a check. $15,000, already signed, my name written in her perfect cursive. Consider this a bonus, she said, sliding it across the table. For all your hard work, though I think you'll find your talents better suited to other projects, less complicated ones. The threat wasn't subtle. Take the money, shut up, move on. The board members looked anywhere but at me. Even James studied his phone like it held the secrets of the universe. I don't want your money, I said, leaving the check on the table. Savannah's smile widened. Everyone wants money, Madison. The smart ones just know when to take it. The next morning, my keycard wouldn't open the executive floor. An email from HR waited in my inbox. Following yesterday's performance review, we've determined your approach lacks the collaborative spirit essential to Ridgewell's culture. Effective immediately, you've been reassigned to data entry pending further evaluation. Data entry, after 5 years of managing $100 million portfolios, they wanted me counting pennies in the basement. The message was clear: submit or suffocate. But Savannah had made a critical error. She'd assumed I was like everyone else she'd crushed, desperate enough to need the job, scared enough to stay quiet, small enough to disappear. She didn't know that I'd spent my entire career learning one essential truth: the only thing more dangerous than someone with nothing to lose is someone with everything to prove. That night, I sat in my home office, laptop open, accessing the Ridgewell systems through the back door I'd created years ago for emergency maintenance. Technically illegal, perhaps, but Savannah had just declared war on the wrong person. Every transaction, every email, every deleted file, I began downloading it all. $61 million in charity fraud was just the beginning. By the time I was done, Savannah Whitmore wouldn't just lose her foundation, she'd lose everything. The game had begun, and unlike Savannah, I knew exactly how it would end. The data entry basement was exactly as humiliating as Savannah intended fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying insects, computers from the last decade, and the perpetual smell of burnt coffee. But it gave me something she hadn't anticipated: invisibility and time. For 3 days, I played the part of the defeated employee, arriving at 8 sharp, typing meaningless numbers into spreadsheets. My colleagues avoided me like failure was contagious. Meanwhile, every lunch break, every bathroom trip, every moment alone, I was excavating Savannah's empire from my phone, using the encrypted connection I'd established years ago. The Whitmore Hope Foundation was a masterpiece of deception. On the surface, it funded scholarships, built community centers, provided disaster relief. The photos on their website showed Savannah hugging orphans, cutting ribbons, writing checks. But underneath that veneer of charity lay a network so intricate it took me 48 hours just to map its basic structure. Shell company after shell company, each one taking a slice before passing funds along. Charity events that cost $2 million to host, but somehow required $5 million in expenses. Consulting fees paid to firms that shared addresses with parking lots and abandoned warehouses. In total, 41 suspicious transactions over 18 months, draining money meant for desperate families into accounts controlled by Savannah and her circle. The Brighton consulting transaction was the smoking gun: $8.7 million for strategic charity optimization. The company was registered in Delaware, owned by a trust in the Caymans, but I traced the beneficial owner through 6 layers of paperwork: Rebecca Brighton, Savannah's 26-year-old cousin, whose previous work experience consisted of selling essential oils on Instagram. At 2:15 in the morning, sitting in my kitchen with my 4th cup of coffee, I found something even worse. Savannah hadn't just stolen from the foundation, she'd manipulated the entire tax structure. The foundation was claiming federal grants based on inflated program costs, essentially stealing from taxpayers twice. This wasn't just fraud. It was a federal crime that could trigger RICO charges. I needed an ally. Someone inside who'd seen enough to be disgusted but had enough access to be useful. That's when I remembered Elliot Cross. Elliot ran internal audit, a thankless job that involved telling powerful people things they didn't want to hear. 6 months ago, he'd tried to flag irregularities in the foundation's quarterly filing, only to be mysteriously excluded from all subsequent foundation meetings. Savannah's hand, no doubt. I found him at a bar 3 blocks from the office, nursing a whiskey at 6:45 on a Thursday evening. He looked up when I sat down, surprise flickering across his weathered face. "Madison, heard you got basement duty. Savannah's handiwork." "Something like that." I ordered a scotch. "Neat. Remember those irregularities you flagged in Q3? His expression darkened. The ones that apparently never existed. The ones that got me uninvited from every meeting that matters. What if I told you they were just the tip of a $61 million iceberg? I showed him my phone, scrolling through the evidence. His whiskey sat untouched as he absorbed transaction after transaction, his audit-trained mind processing the patterns. "Jesus Christ," he breathed. This is systematic. She's washing money through the entire charity sector." "And James?" I asked. "Either complicit or willfully blind. Either way, the board won't move without irrefutable proof. Half of them have their own foundations that partner with Whitmore Hope. They're all terrified of scrutiny." That's when I explained my plan, not to confront them again that had failed spectacularly. Instead, we'd use their own system against them. "I still have admin access to the financial systems," I said. "Technically suspended, But I built those databases. I know every backdoor, every redundancy. What if we could make the system flag these transactions automatically? Elliot's eyes lit up with understanding. A logic trap. Any transaction over a certain threshold gets flagged, documented, reported. 250,000, I said. Low enough to catch the major fraud, high enough to avoid daily operations. That's brilliant, and completely illegal if they catch us. They won't, because tomorrow, I'm going to sign Savannah's NDA, take a severance package, and officially resign. As far as anyone knows, I'll be out of the picture. While secretly, every crime she commits will be automatically documented, time-stamped, and backed up to servers she doesn't even know exist. Elliot raised his glass. To justice. To revenge, I corrected, clinking my glass against his. That night, I worked until 4 a.m, coding the most elegant trap of my career. By Monday, Savannah would think she'd won, that I'd been neutralized like so many before me. She'd continue her fraud, confident in her invincibility. She had no idea she was about to hand me everything I needed to destroy her. Monday morning arrived with rehearsed precision. I walked into HR at 9 sharp, wearing my most conservative suit, the picture of corporate defeat. The NDA was waiting 12 pages of legal threats disguised as standard procedure. The severance was generous. 6 months' salary with full benefits, enough to keep most people grateful and quiet. We're sorry it didn't work out, the HR director said, not meeting my eyes. But I'm sure you understand. Cultural fit is so important. I signed every page with theatrical reluctance, even managed to make my hands shake slightly. I just want to move on, I said, injecting just enough bitterness to be believable. Savannah was watching from James's office when I carried my box of belongings through the lobby. She stood by the window, champagne flute in hand, even though it wasn't even noon. That satisfied smile playing on her lips. Our eyes met for a moment. She raised her glass in mock salute. I looked away, let my shoulders slump, played the broken woman she needed me to be. What she didn't know was that 3 hours earlier, at 6 a.m, Elliot had installed my logic trap in the system during routine maintenance. Every transaction over $250,000 would now create an invisible duplicate record, stored on a partition that didn't officially exist, accessible only through credentials I'd created 5 years ago when I built the architecture. For 2 weeks, I maintained the illusion, updated my LinkedIn to seeking new opportunities, attended a few networking events where I knew word would get back to Savannah, even interviewed at competing firms, making sure to seem desperate enough to take any offer. The predator needed to believe her prey had been neutralized. Meanwhile, the trap was working beautifully. Transaction after transaction flowed into my hidden database. A $300,000 payment to Paradise Consulting, another shell company registered to a P.O. box in Wyoming. $450,000 for community outreach materials that materialized as luxury handbags and jewelry charges on company cards. $700,000 for a fundraising gala that somehow required a private jet to Miami the same weekend. Elliot fed me additional intelligence from inside. Savannah was getting bolder, planning something massive. A $10 million emergency relief fund for a hurricane that had caused minimal damage. The money already earmarked for distribution through 6 different shells. She's modified the charter documents, Elliot told me during one of our coffee shop meetings, retroactively changed the foundation's bylaws to give herself more control. That's document fraud, a federal offense. Can you get copies? Already done, both versions, with metadata showing the changes were made after board approval. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed more than data. I needed Savannah to incriminate herself, to be caught so red-handed that no amount of influence could save her. That's when I remembered Marcus Webb, a forensic accountant who'd been forced out of Ridgewell 2 years ago after questioning some of James's merger valuations. He'd started his own consulting firm, specifically helping whistleblowers build cases against corporate fraud. More importantly, he hated the Whitmores with the kind of cold fury that comes from professional destruction. I met him at his office at 7:30 in the evening, After his staff had gone home, the walls were covered with framed investigative awards, reminders of the reputation he'd built before Ridgewell. "Madison Hale," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I heard Savannah finally got you too." "She tried, but I brought her a gift." I laid out everything: the shell companies, the tax fraud, the modified documents. His expression shifted from skepticism to interest, to something approaching awe. "This is a RICO case," he said quietly. "Pattern of racketeering activity, wire fraud, tax evasion. The DOJ would salivate over this." "I don't want the DOJ, not yet. They'd take years. And Savannah would find a way to plea bargain. I want her destroyed publicly first. Completely. So thoroughly that no lawyer can save her." Marcus smiled for the first time. "You want to weaponize her vanity." "Exactly. She's planning a huge gala next month, the foundation's 5-year anniversary, every major donor, media coverage, the whole spectacle. And you want to burn it all down in front of everyone?" "I want her to watch her empire collapse while wearing her best dress and her fake smile, unable to stop it." Marcus pulled out a bottle of expensive scotch, poured 2 glasses. "What do you need from me?" "Authentication. When I release this data, Savannah will scream, 'Fake news,' claim it's fabricated. I need an independent forensic analysis that proves every transaction is real." "That'll take time." "We have 3 weeks. Can you do it?" He raised his glass. "Ms. Hale, for the chance to watch Savannah Whitmore fall, I'd work for free." As I left his office, my phone buzzed with a new alert from my trap. Another flagged transaction, $1.2 million, transferred to a Cayman Islands account. Savannah was accelerating her theft, probably planning one last massive score before the gala. Perfect. The more she stole, the more rope I gave her, and she was about to hang herself with it. Savannah's arrogance reached new heights in the weeks leading up to the gala. The Silverford Chronicle ran a glowing profile, "Savannah Whitmore, the Angel of Charity." The article featured her on a 3-page spread. Standing in front of the Children's Hospital, her foundation had supposedly funded. What the reporter didn't know was that the hospital had received exactly 12% of the donated funds. The rest had vanished into Savannah's labyrinth of accounts. She appeared on morning talk shows, radiating false compassion as she discussed the foundation's upcoming projects. "We're not just changing lives," she told one host, dabbing at her eyes with practiced emotion. "We're creating hope where none existed." I watched from my apartment, documenting every public statement. Each lie would become evidence. Each false tear would cost her. Elliot kept me updated on the internal chaos my trap was creating. "The systems flagged 17 more transactions this week," he reported during our Friday meeting at a diner outside the city. "She's moving money faster now. It's like she senses something." "Let her run," I said. "Scared animals always make mistakes." And she did. The $8.7 million Brighton consulting transaction had been carefully structured, but her new transfers were sloppy. One went directly from the foundation to a personal investment account before being hastily reversed and rerouted through the usual shells. That reversal was a confession proof she knew it was wrong. Marcus's forensic analysis was revealing even more dirt. "She's been doing this for 7 years, he told me, spreading spreadsheets across his desk. "Started small, maybe 50,000 here and there, but once she realized nobody was watching—" "How much total?" "Conservative estimate, 38 million diverted, but if we include the tax fraud and inflated government grants, we're looking at 61 million in total damages." The number was staggering. 61 million meant hundreds of scholarships never given, dozens of community programs never funded, thousands of families denied help they desperately needed. 2 weeks before the gala, Savannah made her biggest mistake yet. She authorized a $10.3 million transfer to something called the Phoenix Relief Fund, supposedly for wildfire victims, but Phoenix Relief was registered in the Bahamas, its board consisting entirely of names I'd traced to identity theft victims. She was using stolen identities to steal charity funds, a federal crime that would guarantee prison time. That's when I decided to expand my network. I reached out to Patricia Morse, a senior reporter at the Chronicle, who'd won a Pulitzer for exposing municipal corruption. She was everything Savannah feared: incorruptible, relentless, and impossible to intimidate. We met at a park at 6 a.m, joggers providing cover for our conversation. "I know you're working on something big," she said without preamble. "Marcus Webb doesn't authenticate fraud cases unless they're spectacular. What if I told you the Whitmore Hope Foundation was the largest charity fraud in state history?" Her eyes sharpened. "I'd say prove it." I handed her a flash drive. $61 million, 41 shell companies, 7 years of systematic theft, all documented, all authenticated. She plugged it into her tablet right there, scanning the files with the speed of someone who'd seen countless frauds, but nothing quite like this. "Holy shit," she breathed. "This is... Savannah Whitmore is finished." "Not yet. I need this timed perfectly. The gala is in 2 weeks. Patricia looked up from the screen. "You want me to sit on the story of the decade for 2 weeks? I want you to publish it at exactly 9:15 on the night of the gala, right when she's giving her keynote about the Foundation's 5 years of service." "That's cold." "That's justice. She destroyed careers, lives, futures. She deserves to have her moment of glory become her epitaph." Patricia considered this. "I'll need an exclusive, full interview after it breaks." "Done. But I need something from you first. Can you verify if any board members are personally benefiting from foundation contracts?" Her smile was predatory. "Give me 3 days." Those 3 days revealed the final piece. 2 board members had family members with consulting contracts. Another had his son's startup funded through foundation grants. They weren't just complicit through inaction, they were actively profiting. When this broke, it wouldn't just take down Savannah. The entire leadership structure would crumble. The Friday before the gala, Savannah hosted a preview reception for major donors. I watched through social media as she played Queen, her white Versace gown making her look like an angel. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lucifer had been an angel too. Elliot texted me at 11 that night. "She's authorized 5 more transfers, 15 million total, just this week. It's like she's emptying the vault." Savannah must have sensed the walls closing in, even if she didn't know where the threat was coming from. Her instincts were telling her to grab what she could before it was too late. But it already was. The trap had logged everything. Marcus had authenticated it all. Patricia had her story ready. And I had one final surprise that would ensure Savannah couldn't claim ignorance or shift blame. The gala was tomorrow. Savannah thought she was about to cement her legacy. Instead, she was about to watch it burn. The morning of the gala, I made my first offensive move. At 7:30, while Savannah was probably getting her hair done for tonight's performance, I anonymously submitted a 200-page report to the Securities and Exchange Commission. But I was strategic about what I included enough to trigger an investigation. But withholding the most damning evidence, I needed the SEC involved, but not yet fully engaged. Their preliminary investigation letter would arrive at Ridgewell on Monday morning, after the gala, after the news broke, when Savannah would already be destroyed. The partial submission was calculated. If I gave them everything now, they'd freeze the Foundation's assets immediately, cancel the gala, and handle everything quietly through legal channels. Savannah would hire the best lawyers, negotiate a plea deal, maybe serve 18 months in minimum security. That wasn't justice, that was the privilege of wealth-softening consequences. No, I wanted her to fall from the highest peak, in front of everyone who'd enabled her. Elliot called at noon, his voice tight with barely contained excitement. "Madison, you need to hear this. James just had a conference call with the legal team. Someone tipped them that irregularities had been reported to the SEC. And Savannah convinced him it was a competitor trying to sabotage tonight's fundraising. She actually said, and I quote, 'Jealous people always try to tear down those who do good.' James bought it completely. Perfect. Their arrogance would be their downfall. At 3 p.m, I executed Phase 2. I created a secure Dropbox with 40 gigabytes of evidence and sent anonymous links to 3 independent board members, the ones who'd joined recently, who hadn't yet been corrupted by the Whitmore influence. The message was simple. You'll want to review this before tonight's gala. Your fiduciary duty depends on it. Margaret Stern was the first to open it. I knew because my system tracked access. She stayed online for 3 hours, downloading everything. Thomas Vega was next, then David Park. By 5 in the evening, all three had accessed the files multiple times, probably with their lawyers. They wouldn't act immediately, board members never did, but they'd be watching Savannah tonight with new eyes, knowing what she really was, and when the story broke, they'd be forced to act decisively to save themselves. Marcus sent his final authentication report at 6. It's bulletproof, he assured me. I've documented the money trail so thoroughly that a first-year law student could prosecute this case. Patricia was ready too. Stories loaded, scheduled for 9:15. My editor nearly had a heart attack when he saw it. We're expecting to crash our servers from the traffic. But I kept my masterstroke secret from everyone. 3 weeks ago, when I was building my trap, I'd embedded something else in the system, a presentation trigger. At exactly 9:20 tonight, 5 minutes after Patricia's story went live, every screen at the gala venue would display my evidence. The venue's AV system ran through Ridgewell's network for corporate events. I still had access through my old maintenance credentials. Savannah wouldn't just be exposed online. 300 of Silverford's elite would watch her crimes displayed on 8-foot screens while she stood at the podium. At 7:45, I dressed carefully. Black dress, understated jewelry, the outfit of someone attending a funeral, because in a way, I arrived at the Silverford Grand Hotel at 8:30, the invitation I'd received months ago. Before my resignation, still worked. The security guard barely glanced at it. The ballroom was Savannah's vision of heaven, crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, ice sculptures shaped like angels. A string quartet played Mozart while waiters circulated with champagne. The banner behind the stage read, 5 Years of Hope, the Whitmore Foundation's Journey of Compassion. I took a position at the back, partially hidden behind a column. From here, I could see everything while remaining invisible. Savannah entered at 8:45 to thunderous applause. She wore a white gown with diamond accents. Her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo. James walked beside her, his tuxedo impeccable, his smile proud. They looked like royalty greeting their subjects. She worked the room with practiced charm, air-kissing donors, hugging board members, laughing at their jokes. Margaret Stern looked ill when Savannah embraced her. Thomas Vega excused himself immediately after their handshake. They knew. They'd seen the evidence, but they stood there, complicit in their silence, waiting. At 9:10, Savannah took the stage. The room quieted. 300 faces turned toward her like flowers to poisoned sun. 5 years ago, she began, her voice carrying perfectly through the sound system. I made a promise that no child in Silverford would go hungry, no family would face hardship alone, no dream would die for lack of opportunity. My phone vibrated. Patricia. Going live in 30 seconds. Together, Savannah continued, we've raised $61 million. The number burned in my chest. She was actually bragging about the exact amount she'd stolen. Together, we've changed thousands of lives. My phone lit up with notifications. The story was live. Chronicle website. Reuters picking it up. CNN breaking news. But the room remained oblivious, focused on Savannah's performance. And tonight, she said, raising her champagne glass, I promise you. The screens behind her flickered. The screens flickered but didn't change, not yet. My trigger was set for 9:20, and I wanted Savannah to dig her grave just a little deeper. She noticed the flicker, a brief frown crossing her perfect features, but recovered instantly. I promise you that the best is yet to come, she continued, her voice swelling with false emotion. Next year, we're launching Project Phoenix, a revolutionary initiative that will transform how charity works in America. Project Phoenix, the $10.3 million she'd stolen last week. She was actually announcing her next theft to the room. More phones began buzzing. A few people in the back were checking their screens, eyes widening. The Chronicle's story was spreading like wildfire. Someone whispered urgently to their companion. Another stepped out to take a call. But Savannah was lost in her own performance, tears now glistening in her eyes as she spoke about visiting sick children, about the letters from grateful families, about the weight of responsibility she carried. "Some people have asked me," she said, pausing for effect, "how I manage such a large foundation while maintaining complete transparency and integrity." That's when James's phone rang. He fumbled to silence it, but it rang again immediately. His lawyer had to be. "The answer is simple," Savannah continued, oblivious to the growing disturbance. "When you operate from a place of pure love and honesty." 9:20. The screens behind her exploded with data, bank statements, wire transfers, the Brighton Consulting invoice with her signature, the Phoenix Relief Fund Incorporation documents with stolen identities highlighted in red. 41 shell companies mapped in a devastating flowchart that led back to one name, Savannah Whitmore. The room froze. 300 people stared at the screens in absolute silence. Savannah turned, saw the display, and her champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the stage. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. "What is this?" she whispered, but the microphone caught it, amplified her confusion to everyone. The screens changed, now showing her personal bank statements, the Hermes purchases, the NetJets account, the $16 million property portfolio bought with charity funds. "Turn it off!" she screamed at the AV technician. "Turn it off!" But I'd locked the system. For the next 10 minutes, nothing could stop the presentation. Margaret Stern stood up. "I motion for an emergency board meeting, immediately." "Seconded," Thomas Vega called out. The room erupted, donors shouting. Reporters who'd been covering the social event suddenly had the story of the year. Phones appeared everywhere, recording Savannah's meltdown. "This is fake," Savannah screamed into the microphone. "Someone's trying to destroy me because they're jealous of our success." The screens changed again, now showing the email where she explicitly instructed Rebecca Brighton to invoice for services never rendered. Her own words. "Make it look legitimate. No one ever checks." James stood up, his face ashen. He walked to Savannah, tried to take the microphone, but she yanked it away. "James, tell them it's not true." But James was looking at the screens showing his own signature on approval documents he'd clearly never read. His negligence was almost as damning as her fraud. A woman in the third row stood up, Nancy Morrison, whose daughter had supposedly received a scholarship from the foundation. "My daughter never got that scholarship," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You told us the funds were redirected to more needy families, but there were no other families. Were there?" Others began standing, sharing their stories. The contractor who was never paid for the community center that was never built. The teacher whose school was promised computers that never arrived. The flood victims who received nothing while Savannah posed for photos at their destroyed homes. Savannah backed away from the podium, but there was nowhere to go. The screens now showed the SEC complaint number, Patricia's Chronicle article, the FBI tip line. "Security," she screamed. "Get me out of here." But even security was watching the screens, seeing crime after crime displayed in undeniable detail. That's when Elliot stepped forward. He'd been waiting in the wings, and now he walked onto the stage carrying a box of printed documents. "Board members," he announced, his audit director voice carrying authority. "These are copies of the authenticated forensic analysis. As of this moment, I'm placing the Whitmore Hope Foundation under emergency financial hold, pending criminal investigation." Savannah lunged at him, trying to grab the documents, but her heel caught in her gown. She fell, designer dress tearing, sprawling on the stage as cameras captured every second. "You did this?" She pointed at random faces in the crowd. "You're all jealous. You all wanted to destroy something beautiful." The screens changed one final time. A single document, the resignation letter I'd signed under duress, with Savannah's handwritten note in the margin. "Make sure she understands the consequences of talking." The threat that started it all. Her confession that she'd always known I was right. The room emptied rapidly. Donors fleeing association with the scandal. Board members huddled with lawyers. Reporters pushed forward, shouting questions at Savannah, who was now sitting on the stage. Her perfect world shattered around her. James finally spoke, his voice hollow. "Savannah, what have you done?" She looked up at him, mascara streaming down her face. "I did it for us, for our status. You wanted me to be the perfect charity wife." But James was already walking away, his phone to his ear, probably calling the best divorce lawyer in the state. The screens finally went dark. My program had run its course. 10 minutes that destroyed 7 years of lies. I stood up from my position behind the column, walked toward the exit. As I passed the stage, Savannah saw me. Our eyes met. Recognition dawned in hers, the understanding that I hadn't been broken, hadn't disappeared, had orchestrated every second of her downfall. "Madison," she whispered. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd had in months, and kept walking. The Silverford Grand Hotel's lobby was chaos. Reporters had abandoned any pretense of gala coverage and were now in full investigative mode, cornering anyone who might provide a quote. I slipped through the crowd, just another forgotten face in the pandemonium. Outside, blue lights were already flashing. Not police, not yet, but private security and emergency board vehicles. The real law enforcement would come tomorrow, after the SEC filing hit their desks, after the FBI processed the evidence that was simultaneously being delivered to their financial crimes unit. I sat in my car for a moment, watching through the hotel's glass facade as Savannah was escorted out through a side entrance by security. Her white gown was torn, her hair destroyed, her face a mask of rage and disbelief. She was screaming something at the guards, probably demands to find me, to stop me, to undo what couldn't be undone. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. "Patricia Morse. This is bigger than Watergate. Can we meet tonight?" Marcus Webb. "The FBI just called. They want everything." Elliot. "Board voted unanimously. Foundation frozen. Criminal investigation launched. And Madison. They want you to lead the forensic recovery team." But the message that mattered most came from an unknown number. "You destroyed my life. I'll destroy yours." Even now, even with her empire in ashes, Savannah thought she had power. She didn't understand that her weapons money, influence, connections were all tainted now. Every person she'd call would distance themselves. Every favor she'd try to collect would be denied. She was radioactive. I drove home, poured myself a glass of wine, and opened my laptop. The Chronicle's website had crashed from traffic, but mirrors of the article were everywhere. Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. The story was viral. Whitmore scandal was trending globally. At 11:30, Patricia arrived at my apartment with her editor and a camera crew. "This is the interview of my career," she said. "Tell me everything." So I did. Starting with that morning, I'd found the first discrepancy. Through Savannah's threat, my forced resignation, and every step of the plan that led to tonight, I named names, showed receipts, provided context that would fuel investigations for months. "Why didn't you just go to the authorities immediately?" Patricia asked. "Because Savannah owned people in those authorities. Because the system protects people like her. The only way to ensure justice was to make it impossible to ignore, to make the crime so public that covering it up would be criminal itself." The interview aired at 1 a.m. By 2. My phone was ringing with calls from prosecutors, FBI agents, and lawyers representing various victims who wanted to file civil suits. At 3:45, James Whitmore released a statement through his lawyer. "I was deceived by someone I trusted. I will cooperate fully with all investigations and have filed for immediate divorce." Classic James, already repositioning himself as a victim rather than an enabler. At 4 a.m, unable to sleep, I checked the Foundation's website. Still live, still showing pictures of Savannah with children, still soliciting donations. I made one final hack, replacing the homepage with a single message. "This foundation is under federal investigation for fraud. Do not donate. If you have been a victim, please contact the FBI." Dawn was breaking when Elliot texted, "Emergency board meeting in 1 hour. They want you there." I arrived at Ridgewell Systems at 6:30 to find the parking lot full despite it being Sunday morning. Board members, lawyers, investigators, and what looked like half the accounting department had been called in. The boardroom was different now. No more portrait of Savannah cutting ribbons. No more foundation promotional materials. Just grim faces and stacks of evidence. Margaret Stern called the meeting to order. "Ms. Hale, the board owes you an apology. We failed in our fiduciary duty, and you suffered for trying to protect this company." I stayed silent. Apologies were worthless now. "We're offering you the position of Chief Compliance Officer, reporting directly to the board, with full autonomy to investigate any department or transaction, including retroactive investigation of everyone who benefited from foundation contracts." The room tensed. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. "Everyone," Margaret confirmed, staring down the others. "Then I accept. My first action will be a full audit of the last 7 years. Anyone who profited from Savannah's crimes will be reported to authorities." Thomas Vega cleared his throat. "That seems aggressive." "So was destroying my career for telling the truth?" The vote was unanimous. If reluctant, they had no choice. With federal investigators coming, they needed someone clean to lead the investigation. I was the only person in the room who'd never taken Savannah's money. As the meeting ended, James approached me. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "Madison, Save it for your lawyer. James, you're going to need a good one." He flinched but nodded, walking away with the posture of a man who knew his reign was over. By noon, the first arrests began. Rebecca Brighton, picked up at the airport trying to flee to Costa Rica. 2 shell company operators in New Jersey, a banker who'd facilitated the offshore transfers. Savannah would be last. They'd want her to sweat, to know it was coming, to feel the walls closing in just like she'd made others feel. The hunter had become the hunted, and unlike her victims, she had nowhere to run. Monday morning arrived with explosive precision. Every major news outlet led with the Whitmore scandal. The FBI raided the foundation offices at 6 a.m, carrying out boxes of evidence that I'd already documented. The SEC froze all foundation assets and began tracking the money trail through 17 countries. But Savannah remained free, holed up in her Belmont mansion, surrounded by lawyers who were charging $1,500 an hour to tell her what she didn't want to hear. She was finished. The end came at 2:30 on Tuesday afternoon. I was in my new office, reviewing 7 years of fraudulent transactions, when Elliot knocked. "They're here for her." We walked to the window. Below, a convoy of federal vehicles surrounded the Ridgewell building. Savannah had come to retrieve personal items from James's office, believing her lawyer's presence made her untouchable. She was wrong. The FBI agents waited until she exited the building, professional, courteous, devastating. They read her rights as news helicopters circled overhead, as photographers captured her being placed in handcuffs, as everything she'd built through deception crumbled in real time. She saw me watching from the window. For a moment, our eyes locked. No more designer clothes, no more perfect makeup, no more charity queen facade, just a criminal in handcuffs, facing 61 counts of wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and racketeering. The trial would take months, but the verdict was inevitable. Marcus's authentication was flawless. The evidence was overwhelming, and one by one, her co-conspirators would flip, trading testimony for reduced sentences. Wednesday morning, I received an email from Savannah's lawyer. "Ms. Hale, my client is prepared to offer you a substantial settlement to withdraw your cooperation with federal prosecutors. The amount is negotiable, starting at $5 million. $5 million? More money than I'd see in a lifetime of honest work. The exact kind of bribe Savannah thought would make anyone bend. I forwarded the email to the FBI with a single line, attempting to obstruct justice, add it to her charges. By Thursday, the full scope was clear. 61 million stolen, 843 families denied promised aid, 15 legitimate charities that had partnered with Whitmore Foundation now tainted by association. The damage was catastrophic. But we were already rebuilding. The board appointed me to oversee the creation of a new foundation, one with complete transparency, external audits, and blockchain tracking of every dollar. We would recover what we could and distribute it to the original intended recipients. Friday afternoon, sitting in my office with boxes of evidence finally organized, my phone rang. An unknown number. Madison. The voice was broken, hollow. Savannah, calling from federal detention. How did you get this number? Please, I need you to understand. I understand perfectly. You stole from children. You destroyed careers. You tried to buy my silence with $15,000. That money was for the greater good. I was building something important. You were building a lie. Silence, then quieter. They're saying I'll get 20 years. You'll serve 7 with good behavior. More than enough time to think about every family you robbed, every dream you stole. I'll lose everything. You already have. I hung up. There was nothing more to say. That evening, I sat in the same bar where Elliot and I had planned our trap. He raised his glass of whiskey in a toast. To justice. To consequences, I corrected. Patricia Morse joined us, fresh from winning a Pulitzer nomination for her coverage. You know Savannah's not the only one. There are dozens of charity frauds operating right now. I smiled. Then I guess my work isn't done. Marcus arrived last, carrying a bottle of champagne. The FBI just announced 17 more arrests connected to the case. The entire network is collapsing. We drank to that, to the network's collapse, to justice served, to the simple satisfaction of watching a predator become prey. Later, alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop to find hundreds of emails, whistleblowers from other companies, employees who'd seen fraud but been too scared to speak, people who'd been crushed like I'd almost been. Each message was a reminder Savannah Whitmore wasn't unique. She was just the one who'd made the mistake of threatening the wrong person, someone who knew her system better than she did. Someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. I pulled up the next case file, already seeing the patterns, already planning the approach. Savannah thought she'd destroyed me with that $15,000 insult, that pat on the head dismissal. Instead, she'd created something far more dangerous than a mere employee. She'd created a hunter. And I was just getting started. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge and justice served. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment, and let's connect. If you enjoyed Madison's journey of taking down a charity fraud empire, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts below. What would you have done in Madison's position? Your stories and perspectives make this community amazing. Until next time, remember sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's justice.